Yeah, fellas, welcome to The Player Supreme show here at the ZenMac Forums. I'm on my site. I'm reading a post by DMAC, and he's responding to what I've been saying about these guys who claim approach anxiety and depression, all these weak motherfuckers out there, whining about shit. And I've been talking to my guys on my forum, and he's responding to that. He said, I was thinking about what Supreme said about how people start feeling sorry for themselves with conditions like approach anxiety and depression, and how slaves back in the day didn't even have drugs to deal with that shit, but they still got through it. And he's talking about African American ancestors and other people, because just about every race on the planet has been enslaved. Okay? The indentured servants, the Irish, were the first slaves in this country, as worked as indentured servants. Okay? So he writes, and how slaves back in the day didn't have drugs to deal with the shit, but they got through it. It really puts shit in perspective. Imagine if you were a slave, how would you feel? Your life, no matter what your problems, what problems you have, is really not that bad. If you're sitting here reading this post, you're probably fine. And I agree with that. The problem is a lot of guys had single parent mothers, and your mama put you on some fucking drugs. Take an easy way out. And I don't agree with drugging kids up just because they got to get a little hyper or whatever, get a little anxious or some shit like that. It's a natural tendency for the human body to handle stress. We're not designed to drug ourselves away from stress. It's a man's design to handle stress. I mean, can you see yourself, Jovina, put your kids on some fucking anxiety drugs when you're growing up?
No.
What the fuck?
Not at all.
So, what do you think of these kids that claim, I'm depressed?
I don't know what to, I honestly don't know what to think.
Jovina, where she came from, the Azores, which is part of Portugal, islands, they had to go out and work the fields. Her father had to start working at about 6 years of age. Never went to school. She had to work. Do you think he ever got depressed? No. If he did, he kept stepping. He didn't go get no drugs.
He got bummed out, I'm sure. His life wasn't exactly what he wanted it to be, but,
yeah,
it was what it was.
He kept stepping.
Yeah.
So he didn't run getting no drugs just to feel good. He found shit to do. He kept busy. What the fuck? So, and then you African Americans, think of our ancestors. Imagine this. You're a grown-ass man. You got a wife and kids. And this European come into your shack, have you wait outside and fuck the shit out of your wife any kind of way he wants, and then leave, and you can't do shit. And that's true. That's what happened. Do you think those motherfuckers got depressed? Think about that. Whatever race you are, think about if that were happening to you right now. Huh? It's mainly in this country, America, where these males are so fucking weak, creating these new illnesses to justify themselves. Oh, I can't approach. I got approach anxiety. I got social anxiety.
Oh my God.
I didn't like people either. I didn't call those goddamn social anxiety. I was a bookworm. I stayed in my room. I read books. Yeah, I was a bookworm. Does it surprise you?
Well, yes, a little bit, but you already told me that, so I've heard this before.
Yeah. So he goes on, my ancestors were not slaves, but they still went through a lot of hardships. Some of them were Jews in Eastern Europe and had to go through oppression and genocide there. And understand, that whole was all about religious domination. Back in the early parts of Europe, the Catholics were fighting for total control. That's why people started coming to this country, to escape the oppression of Catholicism. And the people who were the land barons and the bankers, they flocked to the Jewish religion to fight off Catholicism. So a lot of the Eastern Europeans, they're converted Jews. They just converted to the religion for a reason. You know, the original reason was to fight off Catholicism. They didn't give up that ties to Catholicism or to the Catholics. And the Catholics were in good with the kings and all that kind of stuff. You know, they worked their way in a real good. But he goes, some of my ancestors were German, and they had to fight the Roman army who invaded their land. But you guys, the Germans paid them back. The Visigoths sacked Rome for 3 fucking days. Now you have blonde-haired and blue-eyed Italians running around. Italians didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes before that. The typical hair color was brown and eyes black, or brown. Hair color brown, eyes brown. To that whole, you know, Portugal, Spain, and what is it called? It's called pigs. Italy and Greece. Yeah.
Spain's last.
That's right, pigs, yeah. Anyway, he goes, later they came to the U.S. as indentured servants in a furniture factory where they were literally worked to death and died in their 40s. And I studied, you know, here in the States, you know, I studied history. And the conditions back in the early part of the country, or the century, 1900s, they even had kids working themselves to the fucking bone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel sorry for his ancestors, too. I feel more sorry for my own ancestors, but, you know, I do feel for his, too. At least their children were free. Tears are coming to my eyes just thinking about it. They didn't have a choice. I do. Exactly. The only reason I exist is because they were strong enough to survive and continue their lineage. Think about that. The only reason why you're here right now is because the men before you were strong enough to do what a man does, which is go out and get some ass, get a woman. Okay? You're an embarrassment to your ancestors. That's my point. If you've got this whole, I can't walk over to a girl. She might reject me. Come on, man.
Yeah, she might, and
I'm not pushing cold approaching, you know, but you guys who do cold approaching, you pick up artists, man.
You're asking for it.
Well, yeah, but at least have some fucking balls, man. Don't be afraid of that shit.
Whatever.
They stood on the battlefield with weapons like men, facing armies far stronger than them. They sold themselves into indentured servitude so their children could have a better future. And indentured servitude was slavery. Caucasians love to, you know, talk about the first. Since the black folks talk about slavery, Caucasians, they now talk about, well, we were slaves too. We had indentured servants. And it's true. They were first slaves in this country. Unfortunately, it was the Irish. In fact, I was reading how the Irish refused to work next to the Portuguese in the islands out there, you know, down where all the Caribbean islands, because, you know, they were leaving Portugal to you know, farm labor out. They refused to work next to them because they were so brown, dark skin. You know, the ones up from the islands, you know, brown and shit. They wouldn't work next to them. They refused to. So they quit doing that work. Anyway. Let's see. They endured endless pain and death, yes. He goes, I refuse to disrespect my ancestors who suffered and sacrificed for me by living a life like a little bitch, whining about pathetic problems. I support him in that.
You've got the right idea.
He has the total right idea. Good post, D-Mac. I refuse to be a wage slave. I refuse to be weak and be controlled by fear. I refuse to be afraid of anything, including death. Just like they refuse to give in and give up, I refuse. And more power to you, brother. All of you guys of all races should listen to that. Our Chinese brothers. You know the history of Chinese in the United States? Remember where the word Shanghai came from? You're over there in China, and you woke up on a boat floating to America to work as a fucking slave, to build the fucking railroads. You think those guys got depressed? You think those guys have some fucking approach anxiety? I don't think so. So everybody's ancestors, you know, you got something to be proud of in your ancestors, because you got here. Think of all the men that came before you. All of you races out there. Think of all the men that came before you. How dare you have problems just stepping over to a female saying, hello, how you doing today? Think about that, fellas. Peace.